Let me ask you a question. How can two separate people, agree on what is true? How can they agree that a particular statement is a true statement and not a false statement, or not just, simply meaningless? After all, there is an infinite amount of possible statements we can make, and only a very small subset of them are actually true. We could just steer clear of any formal system and just trust our own brains. We could just say that any statements which feel true, which we just intuitively, emotionally know to be true, are true. We could rely on our faith. And this method certainly works for individuals. If an individual is absolutely certain that a particular statement is true, then there's not really that much that anybody else can do or say to convince them otherwise. But that method doesn't work for groups, because one person might have a great deal of certainty that a particular statement is true, but another person might have a great deal of certainty that a contradictory statement is true. What if one person is absolutely sure, with every fiber of his soul, that the statement "Yargles are blue" is true, while another person is absolutely sure, with every fiber of her soul, that the statement "Yargles are red" is true? What do we do then? One option is logic, or reason. We could establish a set of axioms and a set of logical rules for linking different statements to one another, and based on those axioms, we could derive secondary statements which are also true within that logical system. And if we're sufficiently smart and skilled, we can develop a whole grand edifice of thousands or even millions of different statements which are all true based on those axioms and those rules. However, that raises more problems than it solves. For one thing, how do we know that we've chosen the right axioms? A logical system can't prove its own axioms, because that would be circular. And if we choose the wrong axioms, then we can build a whole grand logical system and it'll all be false. It'll be like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, built on an unstable foundation. In addition, what about the rules of logic? If we choose the right axioms but the wrong rules, we'll again build a grand logical system with millions of statements in it, but those statements will not be true outside of that system. What we need is a way of actually testing the logical system itself.
That method is science. Science is, at its core, a competition. It's a competition between different ideas. All sorts of different ideas step up to the plate to compete for the status of being called true. And then they are tested. If they pass the test, they're kept around and marked conditionally true. If they fail the test, then they're thrown by the wayside and abandoned to rot in the gutter. Now, I say conditionally true, not absolutely or certainly true, because no scientific idea has ever passed every single possible test. An idea could have passed 100 tests so far, but what if it failed the 101st? If it passes 100 but fails the 101st, then it's not true.
Now, in reality, of course, the ideas do eventually get a break. There's only so much money out there for funding research, and after you've tested an idea 100 times, it may not be worth the money to keep going. However, once an idea is well established as a successful scientific theory, it is used to infer new theories, and these new theories are tested, and all the tests on the new theories are also indirect tests on the old theory. So a theory can be very, very successful for a long time,
the way Newtonian mechanics was. But eventually, some of these tests of other theories based on that theory, they begin to no longer add up. Eventually, instrumentation gets better, and you get, say, the Michelson-Morley experiment. And for a while, scientists will vacillate. They'll say maybe there was something wrong with the experimental apparatus, and because nobody ever really wants to admit that their cherished paradigm, this thing which has been true for hundreds of years, passed every test for hundreds of years, could possibly be wrong. But then eventually, somebody comes along, in this case it was Albert Einstein, who has the guts to say, hey guys, the emperor is naked. And so then a new paradigm comes along and replaces the old paradigm. In this case, the new paradigm was the special and general theories of relativity.
So, now that we've decided that we're testing our ideas, what form should these tests take? Remember, these have to be tests that many different people can agree on. So that means they have to be tests that are external to the minds of the particular people performing the tests. In addition, we all have imperfect memories. We forget things, we smudge things, we mix and match different memories as though they were a single memory, and sometimes we just outright lie. This means that the results of the tests need to be written down in as much detail as possible. And in addition, the results need to be precise. Because we all have different standards for subjective judgments, like cold or large, and we can all be fooled by things like optical illusions. So instrumentation should be used. Rulers, thermometers, mass spectrometers should be used to obtain precise quantitative measurements, and those quantities need to be written down to be examined later. In cases where precise numbers aren't available, pictures or video or written descriptions written down right at the time of the test, and preferably by an unbiased party, should be made and should be kept. All of these numbers and descriptions and pictures and videos should be examined by multiple people, some of whom disagree with the idea in question. In this way, we can all agree that a particular idea has actually passed the test. And to make it easier to make that judgment over whether a test was a pass or a fail, ideas which aspire to become scientific theories should make precise predictions about what the quantity of particular measurements will be in particular circumstances. That way we can know for sure whether they got it right or whether they got it wrong. Now, of course, this is the real world, not the ideal world, so some uncertainty is unavoidable. You know, things are messy, things are dirty, things are noisy. The universe is a very chaotic place. But nonetheless, every attempt should be made to minimize that uncertainty.